identify myself as a queer trans man individual. So my faith background is Islam, and growing up, in a female body, um, has had caused a lot of traumatic experiences, mental health issue. I question my own faith, my own God, because the interpretation that people told me is that like Islam uh, does not accept queerness or being a gender and a sexual minority. The religion that taught me when I was growing up is that Islam sees queerness as a deviant. So it was really difficult to navigate my own gender identity with the interpretation that always taught me um, in a harmful way. But then I started to find the alternative interpretation of Islam. I started my own journey in understanding my own gender identity, my own faith, my own God. It's not many interpretation there, but we have some interpretation that we can develop to be more queer inclusive. Yes. So when it comes to religion and my own journey to understanding my faith, one thing that I realized is that the patriarchy that has infiltrated so much in the religion and in the religious interpretation, not only Islam. Allah doesn't see human being because of their gender, but what Allah sees in ourselves as human being is our taqwa. So in akramakum indallahi atqakum, which means that Allah only sees us because of our good deeds that we do in our life, not because of the who we are. So in today's context, it would also mean who we are in terms of gender, who we are in terms of sexuality, faith, and whatever. I realized that there is a lot of diversity within Muslim practices, within the way Muslim navigate their own interpretation. And that was also the moment that I know that there is openness within the interpretation of how we see Islam. There is openness and flexibility in the way we see other things or like everything. Islam is very beautiful in a way that it is diverse. And there is this very good saying, beautiful saying that says that the numbers of the paths to Allah is as many as the numbers of souls on the earth. And I think that is very beautiful because then you have the doors are so many that you can just open, or you can create your own door that can lead you to the divinity. So then that is also comes to my understanding and my acceptance of my own gender identity as a trans man, that I'm not a broken product of Allah. Even then I started believing that every human being, no matter our gender identity, sexual orientation, characteristic, we are actually perfect product of God, of the divine of Allah. So so that makes me more accepting, makes me more empowered in that many religious texts, many holy texts, many Quranic texts tells Muslims, or even in many verses, Quran speaks to human beings, no matter the religion. For example, the Quranic text would say, "Ya ayyuhan nas," or "Hey, the people of the earth." So I think there are verses, for example, that talks about the compassion, because in the Bible or in other religious texts, they also believe in the spirit of compassion, right? And I believe that the holy text came in a society where the injustice persisted, where inequality existed, and that the Quran, I believe, talked about the spirit of justice, the spirit of for example, there is this conceptualization ontology of the Tawhid, oneness. So this Tawhidic paradigm, the paradigm of Tawhid, tells the Muslim community to realize that there is no superiority, because within this Tawhid, it means that the only authority that is the highest authority is Allah. So within this Tawhidic paradigm, which means that within the amongst the people of the earth, there is no superiority. Well, I think faith, even the gender and sexuality, is kind of life journey, and I find it beautiful because within the gender and sexuality, we know there is fluidity, there is flexibility, and within the interpretation, I believe there is flexibility, there is openness, it is a journey to understand. I don't see faith as something that is singular. Even within the difficult times, I allow myself to be vulnerable on my own faith. For example, I allow myself to question my own faith, question the interpretation, and that is the power when we create this space for our own self. And I think in my own journey now, I feel that there is so much things that still need to be done, and that now my goal is my purpose is to find a purpose. Like, what is the purpose of being queer, trans, Muslim, for example? For example, in the religious Muslim community, for example, they have been actually the terminologies have been developed by traditional pre-modern Muslim scholars. So now the problem is that now that we have this terminology, but Muslim scholars still are struggling to make it relevant to what we know now about gender and sexuality. So there is a huge gap. So now I think the question is that how actually can we engage with the religious leaders to educate them with the more developed conceptualization of bodies, of genders, of sexualities, using framework of GSG, for example, and then how we can derive it or bring that kind of inclusive terminology that have been there, and then how we connect it with what we understand with gender and sexuality now. I know how traumatizing it would be for queer siblings to face and to experience the hostile religious-based queerphobia, transphobia, and homophobia. But the message I would say is that faith is not monolithic, that religion is not monolithic, that people cannot speak on behalf of religion because there is always room for interpretation. There is always space for us to question the interpretation, and even there is space for us to create our own interpretation. And another thing that I will say is that it's very degrading to think that Allah doesn't create the diversity of genders and sexuality, because we believe that Allah is Allahu Akbar. Allah is, the merciful, is the gracious, which means that Allah definitely has the capacity, like limitless capacity, to create a lot of things on earth, right? We know as human, we are not only creature on earth. See how many creatures on earth, that, and even the animals or the plants, they are not heteronormative, and there is always this beautiful of the creation that Allah creates on earth. And it is regretting to think that Allah only creates something heteronormative. So for me, now I believe that Allah, there is this beauty, there's this power in believing that Allah also has the capacity to create queerness within our own body. And the queerness within our body is actually a blessing that Allah has given us, so that we can break all the rigidness of the way people think about their own bodies, or the society, or the faith, or whatever. Our queerness is actually the blessing for us to think outside of the box that is created by the society. And I think I would say that we are actually building the prophetic vision of talking or speaking out about the diversity of genders, and that there is a power in accepting and embracing our own queer bodies.